Now, I've said this many times that Harrison Ford always seemed to be very unenthusiastic about this movie when it comes to a lot of the interviews that he actually participated in, as well as when he appeared at the Indy 5 world premiere. He just looked a little out of it to me. I don't know about you guys, but it was similar in a sense to what Mark Hamill looked like during the Last Jedi press and stuff like that. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into what's going on with Harrison Ford and Kathleen Kennedy involving Indy 5, The Dial of Destiny. Now, it is now July 1st. The Dial has been out for a couple of days now, and the box office is not looking too great so far based on what happened with the preview night on Thursday, garnering around 7 million. That should give you a rough idea of what the weekend is going to look like, and how a lot of theaters have been reported to be very empty or not quite as full as it should be compared to something like Star Wars or even the Mission Impossible 7 pre-sales, mind you. But what's interesting about this is exactly what Harrison Ford had to say about Kathleen Kennedy and how it does expose how Indy 5 was production hell. And we've talked about this many times before in the past of how Indy 5 really had a lot of production issues, quite as much as the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew went through with Leslie Headland and John Watts, and how those two shows, I believe, are going to meet a similar fate to Indy 5 when it comes to fan interest levels. So let's get right into this, shall we? Now, on top of this, with Indy 5 now in theaters and those like James Mangold and Harrison Ford promoting the film, Ford eventually went on to talk about Kathleen Kennedy and her role with the fifth film. Harrison went on to deliver the following. Well, we had a lot of creative roadblocks when working on this movie. I didn't really agree with everything Kathy was putting into the film. For what it's worth, from all of that, I never really endorsed the idea of time travel in this movie. It just didn't feel, like Indy to me, and I figured we should stick with a simple relic that doesn't go too overboard. I didn't really agree with the ending either, that she created, but hey, I'm just an actor, and who am I to say in the producing and creative field of things? But yeah, no, it was a difficult production and things most certainly changed. While my injury was healing up with my shoulder, I came back on set and Kathy was like, Phoebe has contributed to these amazing ideas and concepts that we are putting into the story, and I just sat there and said, okay, well, I guess I just think our original vision was better than the one that we got, and Kathy was making too many calls with this one. So let me pause here quick. Now, obviously, Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford. He always stumbles on his words there and has a lot of ums. But when we look at Indy 5, we know that, yes, he hurt his shoulder quite badly, by the way. I don't know if it was quite as bad as when he hurt his ankle when filming The Force Awakens. You guys may recall that. But everything related to Indy 5 right now is pointing toward the production being a very hellish production behind the scenes. And a lot of it had to do with a lot of changes of the ending, how Ke Huy Quan, we talked about that, he was supposed to come back as Shorty, aka Short Round, that got cancelled too. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, as there have been more developments involving one of the original 6 endings that we talked about. But what's interesting here is that Harrison Ford is unleashing against Kathleen Kennedy to a degree, and it's really a moment where he's throwing her under the bus. We see that Harrison Ford is the type of guy that doesn't really care about consequences. This is a guy, by the way, that went on the record of the Rise of Skywalker press and said, I don't know what in the F a Force Ghost is. He literally said that. And he really just puts it out there that he does not care about the fandom on either end of the spectrum, whether it be Indiana Jones or Star Wars. He just likes to say it like it is, of what's going through his mind. So that's why he remains quite inconsistent at times too. Sometimes he's defending this movie, sometimes he's not. So I don't really know if he's all the way there. What he's going through with these interviews, if he's sober, I have no idea. But when you look at this, continuing on, He goes on to elaborate further, Kathy, I feel, should have just not gotten as involved with the story on this one because we had so many different endings that the production was getting confusing. I was like, wait, where am I? On the set now, what scene is this for? So the time travel stuff really got iffy because of all the green screen. Time period am I in now? It was a little messy and unorganized, but I had fun, I guess. I know they are still focusing on sequels, which I think should just stop. I mean, I think this franchise just needs to end, so not sure why Kathy feels it needs to be expanded upon. Indy is done, so let it be done. I guess they want to expand Helena's adventures and such, but yeah, I don't know much about that, all I can really say. So, again, he's confirming here that sequels of Indy 5 are still in discussion over at Lucasfilm, and all I have to say about that, guys, is Lucasfilm, what are you thinking? Nobody wants, especially if it's going to focus on Helena and Teddy. Please, a hard no. That's all I have to say. So, Harrison really, like I said before, unleashing about the production being so unorganized behind closed doors and how the endings did change quite a bit drastically from process to process, and all of these different moments where he didn't really know where he was because there was a lot of green screening involved in many endings of Indy 5, and it got very confusing for him. And when you look at his acting, he does seem quite a bit off, especially when they go through that specific moment. I won't unveil it just yet, but yeah, I mean, when you look at it in that sense, Harrison Ford really just seems to not care at this point. I think he's finally realizing, I got my paycheck, what's done is done, and I'm moving on now to Marvel. Who cares? That's kind of like this attitude that he's giving off, you know, and before you know it, he'll say the same exact thing about Red Hulk in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. My thing, that's that, I'm just done. I don't think he really cares about fandoms, and that's one thing about Ford. If I were Harrison Ford, as much as I love the guy, I mean, I grew up with Indiana Jones, I would have more respected my legacy than a paycheck at that age of 80. I would have absolutely taken that into account. I would have said no to Lucasfilm, get somebody else, do a recast, or I'm not coming back. That's what I would have said. And I would have respected my legacy and left things off with Indy 4, even though that was kind of a lemon. They could have just left it as is. So, yeah, we got a lot of mixed reviews, by the way, guys. Let's be honest here. And a lot of people have been questioning the validity of those reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm not here to say whether they are fake or real, because who really knows? Seem fishy about Rotten Tomatoes. I will very much admit about that. Something really seems off, and at the end of the day, I think we should all pay attention to the Metacritic score. Those tend to be a little bit more, or quite drastically more accurate in my experience, especially with The Rise of Skywalker. If you look at that, meets Rotten Tomatoes. But overall, guys, you know, drop a comment below. Feel me. If you enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.